When a man starts to pull away, something very interesting happens. A woman's body begins to speak, louder than her words ever could. She'll tilt her head slightly when you walk into the room, eyes searching yours for answers you're not giving. Her smile becomes less frequent, more cautious. She starts to cross her arms more often, not because she's cold, but because she's protecting herself, guarding her energy, her heart. She might fidget, fix her hair, adjust her clothes, not to attract you, but to regain some control in a moment that feels uncertain. Her laughter, it becomes more forced, and if you're really paying attention, you'll notice her posture change. She turns slightly away from you, creating space where closeness used to live. You see, ignoring her doesn't make her chase, it makes her question. It makes her reevaluate, and slowly she begins to detach. That warmth you once felt, it's fading. That eagerness in her eyes, it's dimming. And the silence you thought would bring power, it's building a wall she may never try to climb again. Because a woman, when ignored, doesn't stay stuck. She starts to choose herself. And that right there is when everything shifts. When a woman starts to feel ignored, her body often reacts before her words do. It's almost instinctive. The shift is subtle at first. You might not catch it unless you're really paying attention. Her eyes don't light up the same way when you enter the room. That spark that once danced across her face when you spoke, it starts to dim. Her expressions become more reserved, her gaze a little more distant, almost like she's searching for something but not finding it in you anymore. She'll begin to close off in physical ways too. Where she used to lean in when you talked, she might now lean back or turn slightly away. It's a protective reflex, a subconscious attempt to guard her heart. She crosses her arms more, not necessarily because she's defensive, but because she's building a wall without even realizing it. Her body is starting to speak a language of withdrawal. You may notice her hands fidgeting more, adjusting her hair, touching her face, shifting in her seat. These are signs of discomfort and internal conflict. She feels the absence, and it's unsettling. Her movements become less open, more controlled. Where she used to let her guard down, now you'll sense restraint. The warmth that used to come so naturally is replaced with caution. And her voice, it might soften, not in affection, but in hesitation. Her energy becomes harder to read, and that's not by accident. It's a reflection of the distance growing between you. What many fail to realize is that her body language isn't just reacting to you, it's recalibrating around the emotional gap you've created. She's adjusting, not because she wants to, but because she has to. And if you're not attuned to those changes, you'll miss the warning signs completely. When a woman begins to feel emotionally neglected, she doesn't always speak up right away. Instead, her body takes the lead. The first signs of distance aren't always loud. They're quiet, almost invisible unless you're looking closely. She stops initiating touch. Her hugs become shorter, her hands less likely to reach for yours. Where she once sat close, now there's space between you, not just physically, but emotionally. And that space grows slowly day by day. Her tone shifts. It's less playful, more measured. She might still respond, still engage, but there's a hesitation, like she's trying to protect parts of herself that once felt safe with you. She doesn't share as freely, and conversations become more surface level. That depth she used to offer, it starts to fade, not out of punishment, but out of self-preservation. She'll begin to be more guarded, more selective with her energy. It's not drama, it's not manipulation, it's survival. Because for her, staying open while feeling unseen is exhausting. So she begins to shut down, quietly pulling back her affection, her presence, her vulnerability. She's not angry, she's hurt. And her silence, her distance, that change in energy, that's how she copes when connection starts to feel one-sided. When a woman feels ignored, the instinct to chase isn't always her first response. In fact, quite often it's the opposite. She doesn't throw herself into proving her worth or demanding attention. Instead, something inside her begins to question, quietly at first, then more insistently. She asks herself why she feels invisible in a space where she once felt chosen. The more the silence stretches between you, the more those questions grow. And with those questions comes reflection. She starts to notice patterns, the unanswered messages, the short replies, the lack of eye contact, the way you seem present but not really there. And instead of running toward you to fix what's broken, she pulls inward, not out of pride, but out of necessity. She begins to detach because staying emotionally available to someone who seems indifferent slowly chips away at her self-worth. The more she feels unseen, the more she retreats. And the less she feels safe being vulnerable, the more she closes off. It's not a game. It's not passive aggressiveness. It's her way of protecting her spirit. The detachment isn't always loud. It's in the skipped check-ins, the missed goodnights, the shorter conversations. It's in the decision to share less, to expect less, to need less. And once she reaches that place, something fundamental begins to shift. The desire to be chosen gets replaced with the clarity that she deserves to feel prioritized. She no longer feels the urgency to prove herself. Instead, she starts to value her peace more than your presence. And that turning point is quiet but permanent, because the emotional distance that formed in response to being ignored becomes the foundation for her next move, protecting her heart and stepping back from the space where she no longer feels emotionally safe. When a woman reaches the point where she consistently feels unseen, unheard, and unvalued, something deep within her begins to shift. And once she reaches that place, something fundamental begins to shift. The desire to be chosen gets replaced with the clarity that she deserves to feel prioritized. She no longer feels the urgency to prove herself. Instead, she starts to value her peace more than your presence. And that turning point is quiet, but permanent, because the emotional distance that formed in response to being ignored becomes the foundation for her next move, protecting her heart and stepping back from the space where she no longer feels emotionally safe. When a woman reaches the point where she consistently feels unseen, unheard, and unvalued, something deep within her begins to shift. At first, she might question herself, wondering if she's being too sensitive or asking for too much. But after sitting in that emotional silence long enough, she stops asking for what she deserves. Not because she no longer wants it, but because she no longer expects it from you. And that's when everything changes. She begins to redirect her energy. The love and attention she once gave freely to you without hesitation, it now returns inward. She pours into her own healing, her own growth, her own peace. You'll notice she's less reactive, less emotional. Not because she's over it, but because she's learning to detach from the parts of the connection that keep wounding her. She starts to protect her emotional space with boundaries that weren't there before. The version of her that used to wait up, overthink, and hold space for your silence starts to fade. And in its place, a quieter, stronger version of her rises. This isn't bitterness, this is clarity. It's her recognizing that love shouldn't have to feel like begging, that presence shouldn't feel like a performance, that connection shouldn't be a constant battle to be noticed. And when she realizes that, she makes a decision, not loudly, not dramatically, but with a calm certainty. She decides to choose herself, not as a weapon, but as a form of self-respect. Because when someone continuously overlooks her presence, she learns to no longer offer it. And here's the part most people don't understand. Once she chooses herself truly and fully, she rarely looks back. The space she once held for you becomes filled with her own light. The validation she once sought from you, she now finds within. And if you try to reach for her again, you may find her unreachable. Not out of spite, but because she's finally at peace. That shift is quiet. There's no big announcement, no closure letter, just a steady withdrawal and a calm acceptance that what she needed couldn't be found in you. And by the time you notice, she's already moved on in a way that words can't reverse. So when you think ignoring her gives you power, understand that it only gives her perspective. Her silence isn't weakness, it's wisdom. Her distance isn't punishment, it's protection. And the moment she chooses herself over your inconsistency, there's no rewind. Because once a woman sees her own worth clearly, the version of her that tolerated being invisible no longer exists.